this is how I would manage the sale of contracts or memberships, the management of contracts and memberships, and the renewals of contracts or memberships inside of Monday.com Sales CRM. By the way, if you'd like us to help you set up Monday.com for your business, check out the link in the description below. Anyway, as you can see here, I'm inside of our example Monday.com sales CRM system. And in today's video, I'm going to be walking you through a sales setup to facilitate the sale of memberships or contracts, either or. And then once the sale has been completed, you then have a means of managing those contracts or memberships. And then when they're up for renewal, it kind of automatically creates a new deal. So there's a whole cycle here from new opportunity or new deal to new active memberships to upcoming renewal memberships, and it repeats indefinitely. So what we're going to go ahead and do is create our first board here, and this is going to be our deals board, okay, or can be called whatever you want. This is the sales pipeline. Privacy options I'll leave as main, and then what we're managing on here is going to be our deals, okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and press create board. Now in this video, I'm not Actually, no, I will. I was going to say I'm not going to bother creating accounts and contacts. I will create accounts, and I'll show you why in a moment. I'm not going to bother with contacts. So let's just assume that the accounts and contacts are all on the same board. So we've got new deals as the different stages. And again, this is going to be very generic. So then we go active deals, in negotiation deals, in negotiation deals. I knew I'd spell that wrong. There we go. And then let's say in contract deals, and then we'd have either won deals or lost deals. So won deals or lost deals. Awesome. Cool. So I put that in the green. There we go. Put that in nice little orange there. In negotiation could be in blue, perhaps. We've got new, active, in negotiation, in contract, won or lost. I think those different stages of the process are pretty self-explanatory. And then all we need to do is make sure that the status option matches our grouping options, okay? So we would go, default label is going to be new. We'd then go active, and then I'd have green as won, red as lost, naturally, and then we'd have in negotiation, there we go, and then in contract, and then I've just changed the colors to make sure that they match. So there we go, and then I'll move this down to the bottom here, and then active is in purple. There we go. So new, active, in negotiation, in contract, won and or lost. Okay, cool. So that's pretty much the process. Obviously, if you wanted to then set up, let's say date created, so the day in which the deal was created, add another date column. This is going to be the date in which the deal was closed, and then adding a formula column. And then we could work out the difference in days between date created and date closed, giving us an average time to close a deal. Then we can filter by either won or lost based on the different groupings. That is why we use groups. So I would say, give me the difference in days between date created and date closed, and just hit enter. Awesome. So that should give us the formula, which it has. And then I'd probably call this just TTC. We're doing this for reporting purposes. Obviously, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. I would hide the column summary, restrict the column editing, do the same for date closed and also date created. So now we have the very basic setup of the deals pipeline. Okay, now this is extremely rudimentary. What we're going to go ahead and do now is just set up the automation. So we go automate top right hand corner, manage, create automation. So when item created, then we would set date created to today. Okay, so that's kind of automation number one. Every new deal that's added to the board, the date created is automatically populated. We would then go when, and this is where it gets a bit boring, so apologies. When status changes to new, move item to group new. As I'm sure you can probably imagine, we need to do this for every single automation, every different stage. So when status changes to active, move item to group active, and then when status changes to in negotiation, move item to group in negotiation. And then the next one, and then the next one. When status changes to in contract, to move item to group in contract. Now you could then look at integrating with something called DocuSign if you wanted to automatically send out contracts when status status changes to 1, move item to group 1. The important thing that we also want to do here is set the date in which it was won, so date closed, to today. Okay, so that's really important. We also want to do exactly the same thing for when status changes to lost, move item to group lost, and also set date lost or date closed to today. So date closed to today. Awesome. So now we've got the really basic stuff set up here. So now what I want to really be thinking about is our accounts board as well. So I'll come on to setting up the different data points on our deals board in a moment. What I'm now looking to do is obviously create our accounts board, and we're going to be managing accounts on here. Again, privacy options are entirely up to you, but these are just going to be the businesses that we're selling to. Okay, so you've got the sales process, which is the deals. That's a dynamic process. And then you have the accounts, which is a static data set of all of your accounts, which are companies. So I would just say all accounts as the group, for example. And then we would have, let's say, CRM Crew Limited. And then what we would want to do, I mean, you can add date created, you can have a files column, you can have whatever you want really on your accounts. For the sake of this video, I'm going to strip it right back. So we've got CRM Crew Limited. What I'd probably add is maybe a text column, and this would be point of contact name, so POC, and then we'd add email. So this isn't the best practice, you'd probably tell, right? But I'm just going to keep it simple. So you probably split accounts and contacts separately. In this case, I'm just going to put it all in one. And then we might have, let's say, a location for a company. We might also have, let's say, a text column for the domain of the company to do some fancy connections. What we do want to have on here, though, and this is really important with contracts within Monday.com, is that we have an account ID. Now, the account ID should be a unique reference of some description relating to that account. Okay, so as an example, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set this this column as required. Where's my option to set this column as required gone? It seems to have disappeared. Every time a new account is created, we need the account ID to automatically be populated again in here. So what I would probably say is, let's say, CRMC, so that's CRM Crew, and then 123. So that's the account ID for CRM Crew Limited. That is a really important component of this. I'm just trying to see, I don't know where the set column as required is gone. What you can also do is if you go to enable item creation form, so 3-dotted button, go to settings, enable item creation form. And then anytime a new account is to be created, you can go edit top right hand corner and set the account ID as required. You can either do that or you can have it automatically populate. So in order to create a new account, they must enter an account ID. Now, the account ID is really, really important here for the entire process. So we've already got our account, which is CRM Crew Limited. We might come on to creating some more accounts in a moment's time. But what we're then going to do is go to our deals board, and we're going to create a connect boards column, and we're going to connect our deals board to our accounts board. So we're going to select the accounts, create a two-way connection, and then connect board. So now we have the account associated with this particular deal. So I can associate CRM Crew Limited with this particular deal. Now, at the moment, it's just a standard deal process, but obviously we're going to be looking at memberships in a moment's time, or memberships or contracts. Same thing. They have a start date and an end date. They expire at some point. You want to resell them into something else. So I've now created the connection column, connected our account to our deal. What I also want to do, this is pretty important, is I want to have our account ID as a text column on the deal. So account ID. So if you're creating a new account for the first time, you go to the accounts board, you create a new account, and then you go to the deals board, create a new deal as well. And we want to set this also as required. Again, I don't know where that's gone. Usually there's like a option to just set it as required, but it's vanished for some reason. So again, what we'll do, 3-dotted button settings, enable item creation, and then what we'll do is just go to, what did I enable it or disable it there? Settings, disable, which is meant to be active now. There we go, new deal. And then the account ID, again, we're just going to make the account ID required. So required here, and just press done. Awesome. So in order to create a new deal, you must add the account ID, which was CRMC 123. Now what we can do is we can say when an item is created and the account ID matches the account ID on the accounts board, then they automatically connect. So we can run that automation. If you go to automate, top right hand corner, and go search when item created, connect item. So we're looking for when an item is created in this board, connect the item where this column matches this column in another board by this logic. Okay, so the other board is obviously going to be our accounts board that we've just created. This column is going to be the account ID. This column is also going to be account ID, and then the connection column will be connecting via the connection column. Okay, so if I go ahead and create a new deal and the account ID is CRMC 123, really nice and generic, and press save, that will then automatically run that automation and connect that account, or at least it should do, to the deal, which it has done very, very simply there. Very nice and easy. Awesome. Amazing when things work, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of all of these. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we will set up some of the data points for our deal. So what do we actually need to track? So we need to track, let's say, the numbers column, which is going to be the contract value or the membership value. Contract. I'm going to call it contracts, but you get the idea. Contracts and memberships, same thing, different terminology. Contract members, contract value, okay? And then 3 dotted buttons, settings, and then customize, and then we're going to look at the currency, right? So we'll work in the dollar in this particular instance. So we've got contract value. We're then going to have the date column, which is going to be the start date of the contract. So this is going to be start date. And then we might also have another date column, and this is going to be the end date. Okay. So we need to set this up when we are doing the sales process. So we have our contract value, which is, let's say, 50,000 for the year. We have a start date and end date. We could have, let's say, a status column, and this could be contract terms as an example. So it could be 6 month, 12 month, 24 month. So you could go ahead and add those different options there. So you'd have 6 months, 12 months, and then, I don't know, let's just go 24 months, keep things simple. 24 months. These are the standard contract term options, right? Again, it's going to be nuanced to your business. And then we could go ahead, hide the column summary. Now, if you wanted to get really fancy, you could tie in the contract terms with the start date and end date. And then what you also might have is another status column, and these could be payment terms. Okay, so this is the payment terms of the deal. So some people might pay for the full 24 months up front. They might pay for the full 6 months up front. You might have different contract terms. So that's something that you're going to need to bear in mind. Okay. So you might have monthly, quarterly, and then I'll spell that wrong. Oh no. Quarterly. Oh no. There we go. I knew I'd get there in the end. Without support, might I add. Monthly, quarterly, and annual. Annually, quarterly, annually. There we go. That will do the job. So we've got some payment options as well. Now, again, how far you choose to use these, it's entirely up to you. These, again, we can then create a payments board. Payment terms can trigger different payment dates, etc., etc., etc. But for the sake of this video, again, I'm going to keep it pretty simple. So now we have all of the, I would say, key data points associated with our deal here. Status, contract value, contract terms, payment terms, start date, end date. Files column, we don't need. We could have it if we wanted to. And then we got a date created stuff. Again, a lot of additional data could be added. I might be forgetting stuff, so I might revisit this in a moment. But what we obviously do is we're going to go through the sales process. Actually, one thing that is probably worth having, by the way, I knew I was forgetting something, is deal type. Now, again, you can call this what you want, and this could be new. So your 2 deal type options are going to be either a new deal, or you would have, let's say, existing. So this is someone renewing or renewing. That's a better use of terminology. So new deal or renewing deal. And we want to be able to track what percentage of our deal pipeline is renewing, etc., etc. So that's probably something else that we would have here. So now we've got our deals board set up. We need to go ahead and create another board. And this is either going to be our memberships / contracts. Same thing. Again, I'm going to call it both. And then on the custom, I'll call this contracts, contracts. There we go. And then just go ahead and create board. So this board here, our membership / contracts board, is where we are going to manage all of our memberships. Okay, so you might have a couple of different stages of the membership process. Typically you would have active memberships, or let's call them contracts. Terminology I'm going to flip between. We'd have expired contracts. Okay, so active is going to be green. We'd have red, which is expired. And then we would probably have, you could have onboarding contracts. We'll probably look at creating some rules that you only need to put them into onboarding if the status of the deal is equal to new. If they're already an existing member, they don't need to go into onboarding. So now we've got our active contracts and our expired contracts. What we're then going to look to do is create firstly a text column, and this is going to be our account ID. And this is why the account ID is so important, is it makes all of this possible in terms of tying everything together. And then what we could do is create a connect boards column, and we'll connect our memberships / contracts to our accounts board and just press create a two-way connection. So now we know the account that this particular membership / contract is associated with. What we'll also do is we'll create another connect boards column, and I want to connect this to our deals as well. So I want to see the deal. That you don't necessarily have to. I would probably recommend it though. So we'll connect our membership / contracts to the deal that this was associated with. And then again, I'm just going to press 3-dotted button, restrict column editing on here, restrict column editing on the account. And then the account ID, we want to make sure that that is entered. So then we can have, let's say, date created. We can have another date column, date expired if you want to. So date expired. Whether you choose to track all of this, it's up to you. In fact, I'm just going to keep it simple. So, right, so let's get rid of the files column. And then our status column options are going to be expired. We're going to have onboarding. I have spotted that on, oh no, boarding, expire, oh no, there we go. And then we'll have, of course, active. Oh, Monday didn't like that apparently. Oh dear Monday. Then we'd have active as well. And then we can get rid of this option. Apparently we can't actually. There we go. Should be able to get rid of it now. And then we'll have the expired here. So we've got onboarding, active, and expired as the different stages of the membership / contracts process. We've got the account ID, and then we're going to want to have, let's say, the numbers column, which is going to be the value or the membership value, membership value, 3-dotted button or contract value. Definitely just switching between these names very sporadically. So membership value, and then what we would also want is 2 date columns, and that's going to be start date, and we would have another date column, and that's going to be the end date. So start date, and then we'd have end date. End date. Awesome. So get rid of that. I'll put that there and then put that there. So all of our different contracts, once a deal has been closed won, it will automatically create a new membership / contract item on here, pulling over all of the data that we need. Now, there is going to be data on the deals board that you might not necessarily need on the memberships board. So what we can do is we can mirror over information. Again, this is kind of nuanced in what you need to see. But first and foremost, let's just automate. So manage, create automation when status changes to onboarding, move item to group onboarding, and create automation. And then obviously we just need to do that for the other 2 options as well. So when, wrong one, try that again. When the status changes to active, move item to group, active, create automation. And then finally, when status changes to expired, move item to group, expired, and create automation. Awesome. So now we've got different stages of the process and the automation set up as well. If I just head over to our accounts board, we'll be able to see the deals associated with this particular account and also the memberships associated with this account as well. Now we can get into some fancy reporting at some stage as well. Probably won't cover that in this video, but hopefully gives you an idea. And then we'll also have the connection to the memberships, which we created. Again, I'll press 3-dotted button and then just restrict the column editing here. So now what we want to do is when the status of a deal is equal to 1, we want to automatically create a record on the memberships board. So we'll go automate top right hand corner, and then what I would do is I'll go create automation when status changes to 1, and only if, So this is the important part. And only if status and then deal type is equal to new, then create item in board and connect boards. Now, I hope you're paying attention here because this is quite important. A lot of people get this wrong. So then create an item in the memberships and we'll connect deals with memberships. Then we're just going to map the data points from the deals board over to the contracts memberships board. So name can stay the same, person we can get rid of, status isn't going to map, start date and end date, and then contract value and membership value we're going to map over. Okay, so we'll go ahead and press create automation. Now that's for when it's new. What we're going to do is we're literally just going to duplicate this exact same automation and just change the status to renewing. And then within the item, as opposed to it going to the onboarding contracts, we're going to change the status, or it's going to be automatically active. And then we'll just write in active as the status as well. Because if they're already renewing, we're just going to assume they're active. Now, there are going to be nuanced cases where this doesn't actually become true. So you could just run everything through the onboarding process. If they're already onboarded, you can just, it saves you a ton of time, but that's entirely up to you. So what we would then do is when the status is equal to 1, and let's say the deal type is equal to new in this case, so when status changes to 1, it's going to automatically create a new membership record on here. As you can see, I didn't enter in the start date and time and end date and time on the deal side, so it's not pulled across, which was probably quite foolish. You can see here though that the account ID is pulled across. What's not happened is the account has not been associated with the membership/contract. The reason being is we didn't set up the automation. So we go automate, create, and again, when item created and only if when item created and where item, that's the one. So I write in when, doesn't come up, write in where, does come up. When an item is created in this board, connect this item where this column matches this column in another board, the other board being the accounts board that we created, and then this column being the account ID, this column being the account ID, and the connection via the connection column. Awesome. What I'll do is I'm just going to delete this because I have made a bit of a hash of it. And then we'll go back to our deals board, change the status back to new. I'll put in the start date, and then let's imagine that the end date is going to be October 2026, the 16th. Okay. Now, contract terms can automatically set this up. So you can enter in the start date, or it can be when status changes to in contract, then you solidify the start date and end date, and it's defined by the contract term. So you've got options here. Okay. What I'll do now is change the status to 1. That will then create a new item on the membership/contracts board, hopefully there, which it has done, pulled across all of the key information, connected to the deal, and also will connect to the account. We've then got the membership value, the start date, and the end date all automatically pulled across. Now, the key next thing that we want to look at is automatically creating a new deal back on the deals board a couple of months before the membership is due to expire. Okay. And then what would happen, so let's just say this status is equal to active. What would happen is when the end date arrives, so this is the first thing that we're going to set up. When the end date arrives, so when date arrives as an automation, and this is going to be when date arrives at 7:45, end date arrives, then change status being obviously the status to expired, okay? So that will automatically move this contract or membership into the expired contracts. Now, it's really important to note here that one account will have multiple contracts. Every single time they renew, it creates a new contract. We are not updating the existing contract record. I see so many people make this mistake, and it is like remarkably foolish of them to do. One account, CRM Crew, could have 20 different contracts. They could have 1 active, 19 expired. They could also have contracts for different things. But every time it renews, if they renew, it creates a new contract record and the old one is expired, okay? Please do not update the start date and end date and membership value. It makes absolutely no sense. It absolutely ruins your reporting. So do not be a fool. Do not fall for that, okay? So we've set up when the date arrives, it's going to automatically change the status to expired. What we also want to do is we want to go to automate, create automation, and we want to say when date arrives, and we want to say, let's say we could go, I would probably go maybe 2 months before date arrives, the end date arrives, but that's again entirely up to you. We would say create item in board. We're then going to go ahead and create a new deal on our deals board, and the item is going to map over the data. So the name will map over, the person will map over, won't map over. The account ID will, that's an integral part of this. And then the deal type is going to be renewal. I think I put renewal. And then contract terms are fine. We can leave that. Payment terms are fine. Start date and end date can go because it's brand new. So now we go create automation. 2 months before end date arrives, it's going to create a new deal on the deals board. Okay. Now what I'm just going to do here is I'm going to, because I'm not waiting, we're not going to sit here for 2 months waiting for that deal to the time to come. So we go status changes to, I'm just change it to expired. Hopefully you get the idea right. Create item in board. There we go. That one. Board being the deals board. So I'm just manually triggering this to give you an example of what's going to happen. So get rid of the account ID. So we've got name, account ID. We can get rid of the start date and time. Get rid of the end date / time. Create automation. Awesome. So now when the status changes to expired, it's going to automatically create a new deal on our deals board for the same account. And then I would get in touch with them. I say, hey, your renewal is in 2 months time, just to let you know that, you know, are you looking to renew? What are your plans? Blah, 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 blah. So that is the process. Accounts are static. Deals and memberships are obviously fluid. They're constantly moving. There are different processes. Now, data points from the memberships can be mirrored up to the deals to memberships. Likewise, this can become more sophisticated in time as well. Obviously, this is just the absolute basics to give you an idea as to what's possible. But hopefully you understand that you wouldn't manage memberships on a deal, because I see that a lot. So once the deal is won, it then goes to a totally separate board for the membership / contracts, and you have the area that you'd manage that. And then the other thing that I hope you understand as well is you don't update the contract. You write a new contract. So a new contract is written, a new record is created. So CRM Crew could eventually, like I said, have multiple contracts. And then if you do want to get really sophisticated, you can use sub items for line items for that contract, and then have values per line item that rolls up to the parent item. You would then need to use Zapier to get the sub items from the deals to the membership / contracts, but that is all possible. But this is how you do it. Deals, sales process, membership / contracts, and then the renewals would then come back around onto deals, pulling over the key data points that you need. So what you can do on the membership level is you can then mirror over the membership. What you could do is you could connect it to the existing membership. You can get quite sophisticated with all of this. So you would have to, in essence, you'd end up having 2 connection columns, the new membership and the old membership, and then it would connect. But again, hopefully this gives you an idea as to what's possible. If you'd like us to help you set up monday.com for your business, check out the link in the description below. We'd love to help. Thank you ever so much for watching. Hopefully this wasn't too confusing, gives you an idea as to what's possible at least. And then if you need help, book a call with me. We can have a chat. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.